I'm Bethany. I have been hanging out with these crazy Artemis ladies since I think about 2021. I went on a tracking hike with Bree and I just stuck around for it. So welcome everybody to our fireside chat. This is going to be, I think, really informative and also really a friendly open space for questions. I know there's a lot of questions we've gotten about cleaning your firearms, how to maintain them. Sometimes I know as women in hunting and outdoorsing, a lot of the firearm maintenance may usually fall to perhaps your dad or your brother. We've seen that a lot. So, any questions, no question too big or small. We're really excited to address those, and I think everyone will get a lot out of this. So to kind of get started, I wanted to kind of check out, and I'm looking over because I'm on my phone camera, but I see everybody on the laptop. So I wanted to see if everyone can maybe introduce themselves. Some folks I know, some folks I haven't met before, but it would be great to hear a little bit more about who everyone is, where you're coming from, maybe what your experience is with Artemis or hunting, firearms, any of these things. Bree, do you want to start us off?
Yes, absolutely. I know I could talk for hours about all of that, and I bet everyone else can too. So I'm going to keep it simple, and I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Bree. I'm the R3 coordinator for the state. Hopefully you all have met me before. It's pretty much just my job to make sure you have all the tools and the knowledge and the skills to hunt and to shoot and to fish. I don't possess all those skills, but I can hopefully link you up to someone who may. But to kind of talk about my firearm experience, I guess my first gun that I owned was actually a gift from my grandpa when I turned 21. And it was a revolver from a 22 revolver from like the 1970s. I wish I could tell you a little bit more about it, but it kind of scares me. It's old, it doesn't have a safety, and it has a hammer. And so you have to know how to engage that hammer to uncock it, which is intense. So that's my first gun, but my favorite gun is probably my 308 for my deer hunting. So I will just popcorn this and say, Jen, maybe you want to go next? Oh.
Sure. I think Bethany and I joined about the same time. So it's been 2021 for me too. And I've been hanging out with everybody, only I'm way up here in North Georgia with Melissa. And gosh, I'm a late in life hunter. I shot a 22 rifle at camp when I was a little kid, and then that was it until the few hit and miss times with my husband with, shotguns and clays and that kind of stuff. But really hunting 2021. So, and I still have to consult the manual every time I clean my gun.
Hello, I'll go next. I'm Michelle Garrett. I've been coming to these chats, I guess, since the beginning of this year. I have owned a firearm since, I think, 2002. I was interested in learning how to be proficient with self-defense. So that's when I learned how to shoot. My first gun, that gun that I purchased was a Ruger GP100, a revolver, and I still have that one. And so since then I've progressed to, semi-automatics, and I do have a shotgun. I became interested in hunting probably around 2019. So I'm still, I consider myself still new at it because I haven't taken anything yet. So I'm still trying to learn everything. And I live in Decatur, Georgia. So that's it for me.
Y'all are more near us. We're in Atlanta. Let's see who we got here.
I can go next. I'm Coral Minchie. I work with Bree at the Georgia Wildlife Federation. And I live on Tybee Island. I have had firearms in my life ever since I was in elementary school, doing BB gun competitions with 4-H. I was on the rifle team in high school, and then more recently, I've been exposed to 12 and 20 gauge shotguns. I still need to branch out, use more. My husband has a lot of firearms, and so I just need to get him to take me to the range. But yeah. And then as far as hunting goes and Artemis, both of them I started around December of last year. And I think that was all the question.
Awesome.
I'll go next. I'm Karen Stoidel. I live in Appling, Georgia, which is 2.5 hours east. Like we're near the border of South Carolina. I've recently got into becoming an outdoors woman with that group. And I went to a rifle class Monday and didn't know that there was a difference between a shotgun and a rifle. So, and that was before the class began. I also learned how to cut and quarter a deer this year, which I don't know if I'll ever use that, but I've been told if a deer dies, then I'm the one doing it. So, but I've never cleaned my gun, so it's long past due. So I've been wanting to have a class like this. So when I was told about it Monday, I was like, yes, let me do it. And my
Good
mother-in-law
timing.
is here too.
Hi, I'm Debbie. And I'm
Hi.
looking to see what I can learn today. I'm probably the older one here. And this is my beautiful daughter in love. And I live here in Appling too.
We're so happy to have you both here. Let's see, is that, I want to make sure that if we have anyone, oh, Lynn. And y'all are actually more close to Lynn because Lynn lives in South Carolina.
Yeah, sorry I'm late. I wasn't sure if everybody had gone or not. Hey, everybody. Sorry I'm late. I'm Lynn Lewis. I'm one of the Artemis Alliance folks in Georgia. But yeah, I actually live in South Carolina, not too far from Appling. I'm in Aiken. So I've been around guns my whole life. My dad was big into target shooting and self-defense, not so much hunting. But I learned to hunt and learned about firearms from both he and my uncle, probably when I was, I don't know, 9, 10, something like that. I didn't start hunting until I was about 12, and it was small game stuff. And then it wasn't until I was about 21 and in college that I really started hunting deer and bigger animals. Looking forward to the gun cleaning, and I hope folks can stick around at the very end. We're going to have Tina Johansson, who works for she's the Assistant Chief of Game for the Wildlife Resources Division of the Georgia Department of Natural Resources. And she's going to walk us through how to apply for a quota hunt, because the quota hunts are ongoing right now, and the deadlines are coming up soon. So we thought it might be useful to show how to apply for those hunts. So anyway, glad to see everybody.
That'll be great. See, did we get everybody? I'm scrolling across. It looks like we got everybody. Or wait. Oh, Morgan.
So I've got the little guy here eating. If anybody
Aw.
hears me. It's getting close to bedtime, thank goodness. But I am in North Georgia, just outside of Gainesville. I've grown up hunting. I've always done deer hunting, hog hunting, some duck hunting, stuff like that. My dad always took me. And here lately, we've gotten into like I said, a little more deer hunting and then also upland hunting. So this is actually my pup just walked in. You can see her at the window. But this will be her first season, so this will be fun. Got several trips planned. But yeah, so and then as far as guns, I'm more comfortable with shotguns than I am anything else. But I've done a decent amount of rifle shooting as well.
Awesome. And Nina?
I'm Nina. I am in Fayetteville, Georgia. So I'm south of Atlanta area. I learned how to shoot a 22 when I was like 8, and my mother was appalled. Then I didn't really touch guns until, I don't know, I was in my 20s, and I got Taurus Millennium 9mm and learned that they suck to clean. And then I got a gift rifle from my father-in-law. It's a 44 rifle. So I've never cleaned it, never used it. So I'm looking forward to figuring that one out.
It's definitely a skill set to be learned in practice. It doesn't come naturally. You kind of got to sit down and muddle through it. Let's see. I think Tina is logged on. She might not be here though. So she will
I'm
be
here.
doing. Oh, hey. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself real quick?
I'm sorry I'm late. I'm Tina Johansson. I don't know what introductions y'all are given, but I work for Georgia DNR.
Yep. And if anyone's staying on the call after the cleaning, Tina is a wealth of information about the quota hunt. So she's insanely knowledgeable. She's fantastic. So I will plug that because it is a great opportunity to just learn about that. I don't know enough myself, so I'm looking forward to that. And I think that may in fact be everybody, huh? All right. Well, I introduced myself at the beginning of this, but I'll mention again for those who came in a little bit later. I'm Bethany Havis, and I've been involved with Artemis since around 2021. Like Jen, I'm also adult onset hunter. I never really had firearms in my life, never had hunting in my life, despite living in Alabama and Georgia. I never had it around until just the last few years. So hooking up with Artemis and learning so much from all these wonderful mentors here has been really great for me. I've really enjoyed it. I really enjoy how Artemis is focused on education and empowerment for women. And I'm just excited to have everyone here tonight. So I also want to introduce Christa, of course, because she is the person everyone wants to hear from tonight, not me. So Christa is an Army veteran with a whole wealth of knowledge in the maintenance of firearms since around 2008. She's really been focused on firearm maintenance, shooting, all kinds of marksmanship stuff. She currently works in Northside Hospital Emergency Care, and she volunteers with local organizations to promote firearm education and training among minority communities. And she's been hunting with Artemis, Georgia since around 2021 as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to her, and I'll be doing my little camera thing here. I'll put myself on mute, so bear with us, and we'll get cracking on this.
Thank you for the introduction, Bethany. So yeah, I think I got my first firearm. It was a bolt action Savage 22 when I was probably like 15, I think. I used to shoot a bow, just target practice, when I was probably about 9 until about 12, and then got my first firearm when I was about 15. After I got out of the military, which was in 2011, I actually didn't touch a firearm again for probably about 7 years. So the last few years has been kind of playing catch up. But a lot of the things for me at least are muscle memory. So what I want to talk about tonight, so I have a couple different bolt action rifles laid out. I feel like most people probably hunt with bolt action. So that's really what I wanted to focus on. I also have a pistol if anybody wants to know how to like take apart, clean a pistol. It's just a 9mm Smith & Wesson. And then I also have my AR, which is a semi-automatic rifle. So I can, if anyone has any specific questions about that, I can kind of show them a little bit about that too. So
Really quick, can I interrupt you?
yeah, absolutely. And everyone feel free to ask questions. Most definitely. So yes.
I just wanted to put a plug out there, y'all. We are recording this, and I would like to make it available for other individuals to visit later. So if at any point you need me to stop the recording because you have an awkward question or anything like that, just speak up. I want to make sure that we are still here as a resource for you all, our community. But just so you know, I will be posting this recording as it is kind of a demonstration. Thanks, Krista.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bree. Thank you everyone for being here tonight. So one of the things I want to address first and foremost is kind of like regularity with cleaning firearms. I like to clean at the end of the season and then at the beginning of the season as well, even if I haven't fired the firearm. So the reasons that I do that, a lot of our primers and actual ammunition that we use nowadays use non-corrosive chemicals, but there still might be some corrosion that can kind of accumulate over time, especially if you have firearms that you haven't fired in a long time, have been sitting with, carbon buildup and all kinds of gunk and grime from seasons before. During the season, no matter like once I go through and make sure that my scope is zeroed and everything's going to be firing how I need it, I won't clean it until the season's over. So that is basically because as you zero your rifle, any kind of grime or like carbon buildup in the barrel can actually help to maintain that true zero, because you're never gonna get that scope alignment with a completely clean rifle. It's just not gonna happen. So having a little bit of carbon in your barrel actually helps to keep the bullet trajectory on the same course as when you actually zeroed your rifle. So that means that your shots are going to be much truer, and we all want to have very true, clean, precise shots. So I advise, like, you can wipe down the outside of your firearm if it gets dirty or anything. I did a quota hunt last year where I was basically hunting in a hurricane. And I just decided one day to sit outside for 13 hours because I just felt like being in the woods. And it was rainy all day, so I actually had to clean a bunch of rust off of various pieces of my rifle. But that's again, like the outside, I didn't mess with the inside. I made sure nothing was like rusty inside, but I just wiped everything down outside. So cleaning is super important for both having like longevity of firearms, and also I kind of look at it as a way to get to really know all the inner workings of a firearm. For me, it helps to know what each component is and how it does, to kind of so all of it works together as a machine and as a tool that we use to provide for our families. So with that, every single firearm follows the 8 cycles of function. So, and this is just, I'm just gonna do a basic run through. So basically the 8 cycles of function, once you have a round in like your magazine, if it's an external magazine, internal magazine, once you have the round in there for a bolt action, the 8 cycles of function are gonna be feeding, which is actually putting the round where it's starting to load into the chamber, and then chambering the round, locking, which is locking your bolt, putting it all the way down. Then you'll have firing, then you have unlocking, extracting, which pulls the round out of the chamber, ejecting, which is when the round goes flying out of the chamber, and then cocking, which is of course when the trigger is actually ready to be pulled again. So every single firearm, doesn't matter how complicated they are, every firearm follows the 8 cycles of function. That's just necessary. I mean, that's like, the necessary for the machine to operate. So one of the reasons it's good to be at least partly familiar with the 8 cycles of function is to know where the most carbon is going to build up and where you're going to have to actually clean the most, which is usually around the chamber, because that's where the actual explosion happens. A lot of your carbon gets pushed back as the bullet itself is leaving the barrel. A lot of that carbon is going to get pushed back. Some of it's going to get pulled with it, with the bullet, so it'll come out the out the muzzle. but for the most part, your carbon buildup is going to be in the chamber, which can be a bit of a pain to clean, which is why we use Q-tips for a lot of our cleaning. Some of the things I like to use for cleaning, I use just a basic CLP, which is it's clean, lubricate, protect. It doesn't do great with lubricating, but I mean it's decent. I use this type of stuff in the Army for forever, and I mean I'll swear by it. Some folks will be a little, I mean, some people don't really like CLP too much. They want things that are really specific to one type of chemical, but I like CLP a lot. I also have some Hops number 9 or Hoppies number 9, which is, this is just a lubricant for the rifle. So basically if I'm going to store it, any moving parts, I'll put a couple drops in there and then just kind of cycle through a few times to make sure that everything's gonna be nice and lubricated, so nothing's gonna like jam up or get gunked up. It's kind of like having oil in your car. So some of the things with bolt action rifles, a lot of people I've actually seen will have issues. They'll every bolt is locked in place. So no matter how, if I pull, it won't come out. Now there's usually a button mine. So this is a Ruger American Predator. It's a 308. So there's a little lever right here, which I can actually push, and that will release the bolt itself. And so the bolt will come out. So now we have, just the barrel. Bolt is hanging out right here. We've also got an Enfield number 5 jungle carbine, which has a bit more complicated bolt system. So there's actually a little lever here, and we push the bolt back and then have to push up on this little cam here, and then the bolt itself will come out. So firearms can be really, really cut and dry as far as how you can take them apart. Sometimes they can be really complicated, especially when you get into semi-automatic things, because then you have like a whole bolt carrier group, and that can just be a huge pain figuring things out, especially if you're trying to read it from like an instruction manual, because a lot of times those are not really worded the best. So yeah, basics of bolt and a bolt action. Obviously, you've got where your firing pin sits. So this is the head right here. That's where the round actually sits. You've got your extractor right here, which is what catches the flange on the side of the round and actually pulls the brass out. You've got your handle, which is also sometimes called charging handle. And then and that's really like the main bits that you need to know about the bolt itself. So everything just slides in. It's, I mean, we've all played with firearms, so we're all pretty familiar with bolts and everything, right? Yeah, I'm guessing. Okay. So what I like to do whenever I clean firearms is whenever I get the bolt out, I go ahead and start kind of inspecting it to see how it's looking like dirt wise. I like to get a few drops of CLP in the bolt, especially up near the head. So I'll get a couple drops of CLP in there, and usually I'll just let that sit for a while. With semi-automatic rifles, there's a lot more like moving components. Bolt action is super simple, so it's a lot easier to clean. With semi-automatic, if I've been firing a lot, I'll take like a little basin and put like some water or something in there, have all the components in it, just to kind of soak for a while before I actually empty the water, dry everything off, and then put CLP on everything and let it soak to kind of eat up some more of the carbon. So while that's sitting, we'll show how we can clean inside of here. Now, I like to work from the very, very back of the rifle all the way up to the muzzle. So we have all the firing mechanism, which is locked up inside of here. In order to clean everything inside of the fire mechanism, I would actually have to take the rifle fully apart. But this is where Q-tips can come in handy, because you can get some CLP, which has a nice little applicator, and dab a little bit on your Q-tip, and then we're gonna go inside. Can everyone see that okay? So we're actually gonna get inside of the firing mechanism in here and all the trigger assembly. And you're just wanting to get like a good coating of everything in there, making sure that there's CLP on everything. You don't want it dripping wet, but you definitely want there to be kind of like a film, because that the CLP is going to end up kind of eating away at the carbon and breaking it up, and then we'll remove all of that later. So once I have you know the trigger assembly and the actual like hammer and everything cleaned, I'll start working my way down and kind of going in a circle around the inside of the chamber here, or getting close to the inside of the chamber, kind of working in a circle to clean any excess that there might be. Just, you know, inside of this this actual like the ejection port here, you can build up a lot of carbon, and that can actually make it much more difficult to slide your bolt forward. It can cause, you know, if you have too much buildup, it can actually damage your bolt over time, because you can get scratches, which can cause these like kind of micro abrasions, which will eventually turn into tears. So cleaning the inside of the ejection port is really important. It can be a little difficult, but again, if you have, so this has an external magazine, so I can actually flip it around and get up in there with some CLP. And then we're going to get to the chamber, which is the trickiest part of this whole thing.
Really quick, Bethany, are you able to zoom in a little bit on your phone camera by chance? I don't know if you can.
Let's try.
Yeah, let's try.
Maybe.
Yeah,
Ah.
it looks like it.
Is there anything, Krista, that's great, Bethany, thank you so much, that you don't want to cover in cleaner?
So you don't want to, if you have wood components, you don't want to soak them in cleaner, because that can degrade the wood over time. But just getting some cleaner on the wood isn't going to damage it. You know, you're wiping it off within half an hour anyways, so that's not going to damage it. I wouldn't get cleaner on any kind of optics, so like anywhere on this, like anywhere on the actual lens of the scope. If you get cleaner like on your windage adjusters and your leverage or your altitude adjustments, like that's not going to hurt anything. But actually getting cleaner on the scope itself, and it's not that the cleaner can hurt it, it's from like, again, micro abrasions from when you're actually trying to wipe the cleaner off. That can end up causing damage to the actual like eyepiece and the lens itself, which, you know, for hunting, we're usually not super far away. Most people are taking shots inside of like 100 yards. So having some scratches on your lens isn't going to be the end of the world. But if you ever want to do any kind of like long distance shooting or like competition shooting, it can cause some issues. And if you get too many scratches, that can affect the lifetime, like it can affect the longevity of having that scope. So I would avoid getting cleaner inside of the, like on the actual lenses. I would just use like a soft rag, like a terry cloth or something, just to kind of wipe it down. I usually keep a bandana with me in the field, just in case there's, you know, fog or water that builds up on the outside. Most like good quality scopes nowadays are actually, the inside is filled with nitrogen, so you're not going to have fog on the inside, but you can get fog and like moisture building up on the outsides of the lens, and so that's good to be able to wipe it away just with a, you know, any kind of cloth that you have.
Perfect, thank you. That answers my question. You know, when you look inside the ejection port and you look behind where the bolt comes out of, it's just kind of this big dark hole, and you're like, ah. So
yep.
Thank you.
So one thing that I did not address, that I feel kind of bad that I didn't address it at all, if you'll notice, there's absolutely zero ammunition out here. Anytime that I'm working with firearms that I'm not shooting, there is no ammunition anywhere near the firearms, even though I know like it's just, Bethany in here by ourselves, but I don't want to run the risk of something happening, and the potential for injury is too great. Accidents happen with firearms all the time from people not being careful. So if you operate with an excess of caution, then you're never gonna have an issue. And even though these firearms, I have the bolts out of both of them, so there's no way for them to fire, I'm still treating them as if they're loaded. Everybody knows the basic rules of firearm, owning firearms and using firearms. So always treat every single firearm like it's loaded. Never point at anything you don't intend on shooting. So yeah. Now, going back to cleaning inside the chamber here, what I've done is I've taken a Q-tip and just bent it. I've got some CLP on the end, and I can go in at several different angles. Get this lined up here. So actually, it would be easier from.
Do you need to hold it for you?
No, it's fine. So this is actually a left-handed rifle, so it's weird doing this from the right hand. But kind of getting, so in here, do you have a flashlight? Bethany's gonna grab me a flashlight so I can show everybody. Thank you. So inside of there, everyone can kind of see where the chamber itself is. There are some rounded grooves on the inside of it, and that's actually how the bolt will lock in. Every chamber of every different kind of firearm is going to look a little bit different as far as how it locks in. So what I mean by locking in is you can see that there's kind of some grooves on the inside of the chamber. And when you look at the bolt itself, it actually has these 3 grooves. So these like little flanges here fit inside of the chamber. And then when you turn it, that locks it so it can't get pulled out, or you have like a blowout from the round exploding. So inside the chamber, it is having these little grooves in here can be really difficult to get around. No one's going to be doing like a white glove test or anything. No one's going to be, really like breathing down your neck about how clean something is. So do your best. You're never going to get 100% of the carbon. That is one thing that I learned in the military is no matter how long you have, you will never get every single piece of carbon out of it, but you can get the bulk of everything, which is really what we strive for. So I get my Q-tip as far into here as possible. I try to go at an angle, so that way I'm not going down the barrel. If I go at an angle, I end up stopping right where the little ridge, where the neck of the bullet itself actually fits into. So that prevents me from going too far down the barrel itself. So I just kind of try to get in like a circular motion as best I can, cleaning in on the opposite side of these little grooves. And then I work my way back out towards the grooves, trying to get as much CLP in there and as much of the excess carbon out initially as I can. And I try to bring everything to the largest openings just because it's easier to clean the larger openings. You don't want to get everything like really stuffed inside, and too much carbon inside the barrel can end up causing issues with the rifle itself. And again, like that's over time, but it's still, best practices to not give carbon that chance to build up and potentially damage your firearm. These are things that, as hunters are, I mean, again, like our food supply depends on, these are tools that allow us to eat and survive. So it's good to treat it as best you possibly can and try to take care of it. So once I have all my CLP, and you can see like there's a nice coating of it on the inside here, nice and shiny. So once I have my CLP around the actual firing mechanism and like the trigger assembly, and inside of the chamber. Then I can start working on getting everything, like getting the barrel itself clean. So everyone's probably seen firearm cleaning kits before. They're super, super cheap. I have this one that's like a multi-purpose, it's a universal cleaning kit. So it's got, I have the rod is connected right here already, but it's also got like a snake that you can hook up the little, these little guys, I'm drawing a blank on the name of them. Yeah, we'll call it tips. But this is actually where like your cleaning, where your fabric will go in right here. There's a lot of extra odds and ends. I don't use them much. I will use the wire brushes if I'm cleaning like really hard stuck on carbon, but that typically only happens with semi-automatic rifles, just because there are some weird hinky spots that can get things trapped in there. But this, I think this was like 10 bucks. Cleaning kits are not expensive. You don't need to buy fancy things. I will say that a good rod that breaks off into sections is definitely something that you want. So you can have rods like this, really, really easy to transport, have it in like your rifle bag, or have it in like a hunting bag. Just because if you're in the field and maybe you drop your rifle, it gets in some mud, you can just run a rod through it real quick to make sure all the mud is cleaned out, and then you're good to go. So with cleaning, you always want to clean from the actual chamber, and you want to go in the direction down towards the muzzle. You don't want to go the opposite direction. So is everyone seeing like the actual like spiraling inside of the rifles, right? Everyone's pretty familiar with it. So those are called lands and grooves, and that just helps the bullet to stabilize as it's spinning. If you go the opposite direction, that again can cause small micro abrasions, which can actually affect bullet trajectory over time. So, you know, if you go in through the muzzle first once or twice, it's not gonna to super affect anything, but it's good to not make that a habit. So what I will do is, and I'm left-handed, which is why I have a left-handed rifle. I'm gonna put this back left-handed because that's just how I typically clean things. So I'm gonna get some CLP and put it on. And this is just a little like cotton, like a little knit cotton. They sell like huge bags that you can get, all various sizes. So this is for a .223 caliber, so a little smaller than what I need it for, but I can put like a couple on the end here and get it through, and that usually is good enough to get the rifle nice and clean. So I'll get a little CLP on here, and you just take, and you're going to go all the way from the end where the bolt slides in. You just pop it right there, it goes in through the chamber, you get into the barrel, and then you just push it all the way down. You have the end comes out here, and you can pull that little cotton guy off just so that way you prevent dragging any extra carbon up. And then you just pull your rod back out. The rod's not dragging any carbon, so it's less likely to tear anything. And you can, typically I'll do that. It depends on how much I've been shooting with the rifle and when the last time I cleaned it was. But I'll usually do that base, cleaning out the barrel itself probably like maybe 15 times. And then I'll run several dry cloths through just to clean up any excess CLP that builds up. A lot of the carbon is going to be in your chamber. It's not going to be so much in the barrel. So really what you're trying to do is just getting the dirt that builds up in your barrel out of it. Doesn't take super long. The barrel is one of the easiest parts to clean. The longest part, but
Did everyone lose sound?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, let's try. I'll switch. Okay.
We can hear you now.
Okay. Can everyone hear me now? All right. Cool, cool, cool. What was the last thing that was heard?
You said put through a couple of dry patches to get any excess.
Okay. Yeah. So cleaning the barrel doesn't take very long. And while you're cleaning the barrel, I typically will get everything else soaking. And then, clean the barrel and then kind of work backwards. Again, going to the most crucial component, which your bolt is going to be one of the most important pieces. So as you go through cleaning, I am going to get the extra CLP out of here, and I'll get a couple cloths on the end of my little jig. That's what they're called. It's called a jig. So they can be kind of a pain to pull through, but I'll get them through, and then I'll just kind of open them up a little bit. Yeah, a little like butterfly. And then we'll go in again through the chamber, pushing all the way down the barrel, and come out the other end. And I just cleaned this the other day, but it's again, like nothing's ever going to be 100% clean unless you take it to like a gunsmith and they actually take it apart and soak everything. So I just cleaned it the other day, and you can still see some carbon buildup on there. It gets everywhere. It's a dust. It's literally everywhere, and it's just the worst thing to have to clean up. Which is also why I like to do it periodically, outside of the season, just so that way, like, I don't end up having to spend, 4 hours trying to scrape a bolt carrier group clean or anything, because that can put a damper on your day because it's just boring. So once I have the barrel has been, dried out, I'll usually will take one of these little squares and just kind of on your finger, you can kind of rub inside of the ejection port here. And so you're just kind of getting your finger in there, rubbing around, cleaning up any of the excess CLP that's in there. Which, a little bit of dirt comes out. Getting inside of the chamber is going to be a similar trick to getting the CLP inside the chamber, where we're going to use a Q-tip in just a second. So I'm going ahead and cleaning off all of the actual like hammer assembly and the trigger assembly here. Just kind of giving everything a real quick wipe down. We'll do a bit more thorough of a wipe in just a second, but that gets a lot of the excess off, so that way we're not, if we brush up against something, we're not going to be getting dirty solvent or dirty CLP anywhere else. So once we have that portion clean, again, take a Q-tip, give it a little bend, and then we're just going to get it inside of the chamber and just doing our best. You kind of have to do some blind sweeping to get things out, but you just put your faith in what you're doing. Just kind of take it on a whim. Try to get in the circular motion. Again, avoid trying to push anything down the barrel itself. Typically I'll put the Q-tip like in the barrel and then pull away. So that way I'm pulling all of the dirt and carbon out towards the chamber, and again, putting it towards the largest opening, which is the easiest part to clean. So I'll show you in just a second here that chamber is always a pain to clean. There's, you know, some dirt and grime in there. It's difficult, but not impossible, just a little daunting to clean it. So once we have all of those things are clean and dry, we can kind of go through and just check and make sure that everything is good. You can kind of eyeball test. What I'll typically do to make sure that all of the dirt and carbon is out of the barrel is I'll line the muzzle up with a light, and then I'll look down from where our bolt fits in, and I'll just look down and check and make sure that I don't see any flecks of dust or anything going down towards the muzzle. So we know that, you know, it's good and clean at this point. And that's just an easy way to kind of I've seen people use like really complicated techniques where they're gonna keep sending things through 80 million times, and that's kind of a waste of materials if you can just hold it up to a light and look, you know. Work smarter, not harder. So then we've got the barrel, or the bolt itself, which has been soaking with the CLP. And I've got, again, a Q-tip, because this little extractor pin can be kind of difficult. So, because the extractor is actually a part that moves slightly, so there's a little spring, and you might not be able to see it much, but there's some slight give to it. So you can get the end of your Q-tip underneath there, because there's a little ridge, and just do a couple good wipes of that, so you get some schmutz coming out. And then just circular motion cleaning, starting towards where the firing pin sits and working your way out. And then taking some wipes here and getting everything nice and clean, getting all that excess CLP off of it, making sure that there's no dirt or gunk buildup. If you have too much CLP over time, it can kind of solidify, which can also, I mean, it forms a gunk and then is super detrimental to the function of the firearm. Before I go any further, are there any questions, thoughts, techniques that anybody else uses? No.
So CLP, is that different than bore cleaner? Or are they both cleaners, or is one a lubricant and one a cleaner?
So CLP is listed as being a clean, lubricate, and protect. Bore cleaner works just fine. I specifically use this because it's cheap but gets the job done. So bore cleaner works great. If you're only doing bore cleaner, I would definitely suggest some kind of extra lubricant. Hoppe's number 9 is phenomenal. A little bit will go a long way. I've had this bottle itself for probably like 3 years at this point. So one bottle can go a long way with the lubricant. So if you're only doing bore cleaner, I would definitely make sure that you also use some kind of lubricant, which just acts as oil to help the function of the almost said vehicle, to help the function of the firearm, keep everything nice and smooth. Another thing that we're going to want to check is just make sure that you don't really have to clean too much inside of the trigger assembly, but just get a look in there and make sure that there's no like dirt or anything built up. You know, dirt in the trigger assembly can cause your trigger to not want to pull correctly. It can also cause it you'll have a short pull when you're not expecting it. You know, every trigger has some slack that has to get taken up before it'll actually, before you have the break. So if you have some dirt in there, it can actually affect that. Whether you're cognizant of it or not, we all get used to the amount of slack on firearms that we fire on a regular basis. So having the knowing when you're going to have that break and it'll actually fire is super important, just for your feel and your comfort with maintaining that good sight alignment and good shot. So you just got to make sure there's nothing, catastrophic in there, which there likely isn't unless you dropped it in the mud, which happens. So we've got that, it's nice and clean. Now I'm going to add some of the actual lubricant to my bolt. So I'll let that soak.
While you're preparing for that, we do have about 6 minutes left for our firearm session, but we had a question from Lynn, and then I'll also share my question, which, what happens if we fail to clean our gun until the beginning of next season? And the second question I have is, what happens if it gets wet and rust forms before I get around to cleaning it? Then what do I do?
Okay. So you can a lot of ammunition nowadays uses non-corrosive chemicals for the primer and the actual powder itself. So being very mindful of the ammunition you're using and making sure that it's listed as non-corrosive, especially if you're not going to be cleaning on a regular basis. I've done experiments with firearms just to see how they function when they're dirty, where I will get a bunch of non-corrosive ammo and I'll go 6 months without cleaning it, or I'm shooting it all the time, just to kind of see like where it's at function-wise. It's not the end of the world if you don't clean between the seasons, but over time even the non-corrosive ammunition can end up corroding after a long enough time period, if enough builds up there. If you get your firearm wet between seasons or between cleaning, if you get it, if any like rust builds up, which is an issue, make sure the first thing you always want to do is make sure that your chamber is good, your actual extraction port is good, and that your bolt itself doesn't have any rust built up on it. Most things that might rust on a firearm are going to be outside of the firearm, so largely cosmetic. You can wipe a lot of the rust off. Just make sure you don't let it sit there and build up for too long. If something like if you drop your firearm out when you're out and about, you don't have to call it a day or anything. Like just wipe off as much as you can. Make sure that all the moving components are wiped off and clean enough looking, and it'll fire just fine. If it gets wet in between, just drying it off is always a handy thing to do. I know sometimes like a leak can happen where you might keep a firearm and suddenly you notice that like your range bag or whatever carrying case you have it in is soaking wet. Well, take the firearm out and just dry it off as best you can. So now I've got lubricant on my Q-tip here. What I'm gonna do, cat hair everywhere, thank you. What I'm gonna do is just getting some lubrication on this very end of the bolt. And this is the part that actually fits into the chamber. So we want to make sure that it's decent and covered. And the lubricant also helps to protect the metal itself. So we want to make sure with these little flanges here, I want to make sure I've got the underside of those which lock into place. Good and lubricated, and kind of get this neck here as well. Make sure that this is all lubricated. And then what I'm going to do is just add a drop in this little channel right here, which actually fits into a specific slot in the rifle. I'll just get a little bit, just one little drop, kind of let it trickle down some. I probably should have done it down here, but it's fine. Just kind of let it trickle down a little bit, get into these grooves right here, because this is primarily where the metal is going to rub, and that's can cause damage over time. So you really want those areas to be well lubricated. And once I have all of that put in, then I'm just going to line my bolt up, get it in there, and I'll probably do a few cycles where I'm just, running through and making sure that that lubrication has gotten everywhere inside of the chamber. It's gotten inside of the actual, inside the extraction port here. And then, the actual like runner that holds lines the bolt up, you make sure that that's also got lubricant on it as well. And so that just helps for the function of your rifle. Make sure you make those, clean, smooth shots. And again, like that's the moving parts are really what's important to make sure that they're lubricated. So overview again, clean, like soak the end of your bolt where your firing pin is specifically. Get some CLP on that first. CLP inside of the actual chamber itself, or inside the where the extraction port is, then inside of the chamber. Then you clean your barrel, wipe outside the chamber, wipe your extraction port, then wipe your bolt down, get your lubricant on your bolt, and you're good to go. So that's. Are there any questions?
Lily was wondering, how long do you think cleaning kits are good for? What happens if I find one from my dad from like 10 years ago?
So the chemicals are going to be good for, I don't even know if this has an expiration date. Yeah, the chemicals are going to be good for 10, 15 years for sure. The actual like components of the kit, if you're taking care of the equipment, you could use that forever. Growing up, we had a cleaning kit that I think my dad got when he was about 10 or so, and he was 60 at the time that I was like learning how to clean rifles. So the hardware is going to last forever if you take care of it. The chemical stuff, 10, 15 years. Just make sure that you shake it up really well. Pour some out into like a clear container and see if it looks cloudy or anything. Then you don't want to use it. Beyond that, though, I wouldn't worry too much. I see you still have stuff from your dad for over 30 years ago. So I probably wouldn't use any of the liquids or chemicals for that. But again, the hardware, like the rod, the jigs and everything, this is a plastic one, which are better to use in the barrel because you're not going to run the risk of scratching anything. But they can sometimes break on the sides. So just keep an eye on that, make sure that it's not broken. But beyond that, hardware is not going to be any kind of issue. And just check your cleaning supply, your actual chemicals first to make sure that they're not cloudy.
Cool. Last question before we have Bethany wrap things up for us is, what about wood stock? Do I need to protect the wood stock?
Yeah, so wood stocks, it's like any kind of wood tool. A lot of them have a laminate on them, which is going to help protect. What you can also do is make something called spoon butter. If people aren't familiar with that, that is just a mixture of coconut oil and beeswax, about a 1-to-1 mixture. And that's just really good for helping to coat everything, keeping the wood will keep nice and moist from that, and it'll also kind of form a protective layer outside. I use spoon butter. I mean, we use it. It's a food safe thing, which is great. We use it on like wooden spatulas we have. I use it on every single like axe that I have, all the handles. Spoon butter is really, really good stuff. You don't need a lot of fancy things to take care of a wood stock. If someone's trying to convince you that you do, then they're just trying to sell you something. Most of what you need to take care of a wood stock, you can make yourself. If you ever get like chips or dings or anything, you're fine to sand it. Just make sure you get some spoon butter on there, or like a lacquer or something to cover it to keep that moisture locked into the wood itself and protected. All righty. Well, thank you all very much for listening to me. And yeah, I hope that we all have a good understanding of firearms. And, if anyone has any questions, I'm not on social media, but Bethany can post she can post my email in the Facebook groups and stuff. So anyone feel free to email me anytime and ask any question, even if you think it's silly. There's no dumb question when it comes to firearms. I would rather everyone know way more than they need to know, just for safety's sake. So thank y'all.
Okay, I don't know if the audio is fixed on these yet. Can y'all hear me?
Mhm.
Okay, yeah. Thanks for bearing with us with the technical difficulties. I think we managed to kind of get things fixed pretty quickly, so keeping everybody on schedule for tonight. Thank you everyone for joining us. It's been so great to see all of your faces. Some folks I know, some folks I don't. Some folks are far away. It's really nice to see y'all. And let me see. Bree, I think the housekeeping stuff, we want to do that after Tina's?
Yeah,
Or any
I'll just throw a quick pitch out there real quick. We have opened up spots for our new hunters for our Columbus hunt that we do every year. So if you are a new hunter or an experienced hunter, there's space for you on that journey. So make sure you go to the website, check that out.